Hello and welcome to the dive presented by Honda, Season 4, Episode 30. Our good friend Azael is back from vacation. Welcome back, my friend. Did you get to do anything?
No. Well, I've played video games. That was good. I was grinding some PS4 games, chilling on the couch with my doggies and Joanne. I beat Ghost of Tsushima. One of the best games I think I've ever played.
I've heard that one get super hyped.
It is so cool. Like, just graphically and aesthetically, it's such a beautiful game. It's one of the first games in so long where I've actually been playing, and I just want to ride around and explore shit. I probably annoyed Joanne really badly when I was playing because every 5 seconds I'm like, Joanne, look at this, look how cool, look at this, look at this. She's like, I know, it's beautiful.
Look
I'm like, look at
this.
Yeah. But look at the sun, it's shining in the trees.
I made you a macaroni necklace. Are you happy?
Wait, you can make macaroni necklaces in that game?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm glad you're back though. Freak sucks.
Thanks. Yeah, that's true.
I like Freak. Oh,
I'll go on vacation next because I got 2 doses of Freak. Maybe that's it. It's one dose. That's fine.
Yeah.
I had a double dose of Freak.
It's like a really sweet drink. You take the first sip, you're like, oh, it's pretty good. If you keep drinking it, you start feeling a little bit sick in your belly. That's Freak. Yeah.
This is super random, but I don't usually drink sweet drinks. But I think we already talked about this. Maybe the exploding boba. We definitely didn't talk about it. You talked about this
in a store meeting, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely. I'm hooked on exploding boba now.
You like the little strawberry ones?
I had mango ones, but they're like gushers. They're boba, but gushers.
So when you told me that blew my mind because I'd never heard about it, and I was like, I'm gonna go try that, and then I forgot. So now my boomer brain just didn't retain it because I asked Joanne about it, and she's like, oh yeah, I've tried that.
I was gonna say she is like the queen of boba. So that's why I was like, how do you not know?
Well, she said she didn't think it was good. So,
ooh.
Have you guys ever had the jelly? That's pretty
lychee?
good.
Lychee jelly?
It wasn't
I had
lychee,
grass
though.
jellies.
It was something else. It was like a pineapple jelly that Ashley got once. That was really good. I like all the weird ones she gets.
Yeah, some of them are a bit too much though. There's this one drink place that we used to go to, and then they changed all their drinks, and they instead of just boba, there was 10 different kinds of things in it, and it just felt like I was just drinking trash at that point. It's all these little particles of things are going in your straw. You're like, this is too much, man.
I went to a place like that. It was on Sawtell. It was like matcha something. It was just
matcha cha?
No, matcha cha's fine. I forget what it was.
Joanne loves matcha cha.
It was on the other side, close to where Michael's is and stuff.
Okay.
It looked really cool. All their drinks were nuts, but it was all right, calm down.
Oh, right beside the ramen places, right?
Dekukuya,
beside Dekukuya and stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we're
League of Legends, let's go. All right. So, welcome back to me. Patch 10.16 is out as a present for me coming back. They released it, and I think that was very nice of them to do. It's going to be our playoff patch. I'm pretty excited for it. There's a lot of changes actually in this. Something that I immediately kind of focused on because there's so many changes. For me, I was immediately thinking about kind of the revival of some of these split pushers. I have heard from some of the designers and seen them posting online talking about one of the ways that they are hoping to combat the whole you must group and fight for Dragon Soul every game, this is the strategy, is by increasing the power of some of these split pushers. Fiora and Jax both got some pretty decent buffs. I tend to think that the Fiora buffs are a lot nicer actually. 3 seconds off of the Q at rank 1. You get a little bit less of a refund when you hit them. It's 50% instead of 60. But at max rank, it is 2 seconds off. And if you play a high CDR Fiora build, you're going to have essentially no cooldown on your Q. It is going to be pretty intense because it's 6 seconds base. You get 50% back every time you hit, and you can play 40% CDR on Fiora pretty easily to the point where it's you're basically just mashing Q. And I do think that's fairly strong. Jax also got a little bit of cooldown off the Counter-Strike. I already feel like there are situations where, at least as far as the 1v1, those champions are really, really good and warrant being picked. It's just that people don't like team fighting on them, and dragons have been so important. I'm not sure if this is enough to push people away from it, but I'm hoping that some teams will experiment more with kind of split push style.
Yeah, I was already talking to Licorice before these buffs came out about possible Jax picks. because I saw it in LCK and I got super excited and I was like, oh, what about here? And he's just like, Jax is just too hard to pick right now because the early game is so important. You can stack dragons and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And there has been this bigger conversation around the meta. Perks was one of the most outspoken about it on one of the shows, talking about how he really doesn't like, how focused it is on stacking the dragons, getting to the soul. I know as far as solo queues, the designers have talked a lot about there have been a decent amount of wins versus teams with souls, and if you draft your team composition around Fiora or Jax, which I think the Jax buffs are actually also really good. The 2 seconds off of his
it's basically saying you don't need to max your E second.
Yeah.
I think is what they're hoping is that you go W first and then Q second, and you can sit on a lower cooldown E.
Yeah, it does make me think this might actually put more emphasis on RNG, because some champions do not use like Cloud Soul well at all. And so then if you've already drafted this team that's based around split pushing, and your opponents are trying to stack and then it rolls Cloud Soul or something, is that going to make you feel worse? Because you have to make these decisions around your team comp going in. And if they're trying to buff more split pushing and more options that don't revolve around it, they're kind of increasing the importance of the RNG on the dragons.
Yeah. I mean that's always been kind of a discussion, right? Like even I was on playtest when they were first introducing elemental dragons, and even back then in development, I was like, what if we just showed in champ select what dragons were going to spawn, right? And there's been so much discussion about that over the years. Obviously, I'm not the only one who's had that idea. So many people have talked about
my God,
that.
How'd you come up with it?
But it's like, my point is just like we were talking about that even in development, right? You know, because it's the idea of like, I always thought personally it would be cool because back then, especially, first dragon was way more important than it is now. Now it's about the soul. It's but back then, like one infernal, especially post buff, was actually a big deal. It was like 10% or 12% or whatever instead of like 4% that it is now. So it often dictated whether or not you want to fight for the first dragon. So it was like, oh, do you want to draft early to fight for it? Now I think even if you showed the first dragon, I think it would be basically irrelevant. You would have to show what the soul is. And that I think is like taking away like a lot of the like surprise factor and the fun of like the soul pops up and all that. So I don't think designers would want to do that, but like I definitely hear what you're saying, where it could feel pretty bad if it's like, okay, I'm going to be split pushed and not play for soul at all, but then it's like ocean soul, and now you can't push your side lane matchup, and you also can't team fight because it's ocean soul. But as far as like designers saying that a decent number of teams have lost with soul, there's a handful of games, but it's still like almost a 90%.
No, I'm talking about solo queue stats.
Oh,
that was
closer to 70.
That was a solo queue thing.
Okay, yeah. So I'd seen in solo queue that was like 70, 75-ish was what the numbers I had seen. But like I know in LCS it was like almost 90% win rate with soul, and that's including Golden Guardians. I think lost 2 of the games with soul themselves when they did like hardcore early game comps.
I mean.
So the thing with these stats, because this is a discussion that always has to be made, like if it is a dragon-centric meta and you just look at, this one variable of they had soul, they won.
Of course,
they also won probably 5 team fights leading up to it to get that soul. So that's one of the big things that influences the stats, especially around something like this that has so much baggage that goes along with it.
And that's true, but 90% is a pretty excessive win rate. Like when you start comparing about other important objectives, like historically, like Barons and stuff like that, like 90 is insanely high. So like there's probably a little bit too much of an importance. Or you can argue, if you don't like this playstyle like Perks or something, that there's too much on it. And like without changing the system, if you just start buffing champs, I know this is going to be a little hyperbolic because the buffs to Jax and Fiora weren't huge, but you start getting more into like the Dota 2 style of like hard countering things, where like, okay, if dragons are going to be this strong, that's basically a 90% win rate, and you have to team fight for them. If you're going to make another playstyle viable, you have to make that playstyle have insane strengths in other ways. So like it would be like make the counter pick top lane hyper carries actually nuts, and then you start getting into more rock paper scissory stuff, which is it's a different design philosophy than I think Riot has ever been behind.
I just want to open the door to possible big swings, because if especially in pro, if the meta and everybody is agreed upon, oh my god, the importance of these dragon stacking, and so most of the games are drafted around 5-on-5 style and trying to do the exact same thing for both teams. The one team that gets the advantage early and wins this team fight and gets to start stacking them is going to have an overwhelming 90+% advantage, because not only are they the team ahead that gets this, yes, you get a power increase with the soul, but they also have very similar team comps, as both have been drafted to do very similar things, and that's why people have been also complaining about some of the games where they're like, oh, it does feel super snowbally if they're both drafting similar win conditions and then one is better. Then you also get that added onto the win rate. So if another option is strengthened to the point where we get divergent, we actually have viable divergent strategies, then there could be a bigger swing there. I'm not really fully on board that this is going to do it. I'm definitely very skeptical. We get Fiora is going to be super fun to watch, especially in like the hands of some of the LPL top players like Zoom and the Shy, or LCK and stuff like that. And I'm excited to see that type of stuff come out. But dragon stacking ain't going anywhere.
One thing I will say is that while the game is largely about soul, I don't agree that the way that every team gets there it's the same, right? We actually are getting still like split push style comps and stuff. It's just things that can also group and fight, right? We still see a ton of Jace, we still see a ton of TF and champions that want to play side lane, but also can like actually group and poke or group and fight. Camille as well, right? Like,
yeah, so, and the point is that your goal is how you're getting there to win that team fight. So
I understand it is, but I still think that like that is okay. Like the goal for every team for League of Legends for the last like how many years has been to get Baron, right? To me, that doesn't make the game stale. It makes the game stale when every team has like the same subset of champions that they need to play in order to get there. For me personally, and I have seen some people saying that it's like, oh, everyone just drafts team fight and then they fight and then that's it. And I don't think that's fully true, because some teams are indexing very heavily in early game to try to snowball dragons and force their advantage early to try to create a big gold lead so that they can take down a scaling team later on. They try to play side lanes to to pull them in different directions, or maybe like some powerful early game and then split pushing so that they can grab the first two and then ignore dragons while they take over the map. So I think there are different ways to get there. I do agree that like Dragon Soul is maybe too strong. But like at the same time, I enjoy that there is some forced conflict, and I know that is like a designer's goal, for Dragon Soul, is that it's like there is this place that if you just ignore the whole game, you're probably going to lose, right? And that was the intention of Dragon Soul, and I do think in that way it kind of works, because like it's fun to see the teams fight, right? And that is kind of what that is, right? And generally speaking, on third dragon, we almost always will see a fight, or at least an attempt at a fight, unless you're Dignitas, and then maybe not, but pretty much everyone else.
Yeah,
Kobe.
Because I need. Do you want to have some input, Mark?
No, I'm ready to done. I was done talking about dragons. There's enough other stuff to talk about.
Dragons. I'm not going to talk about dragons anymore. I just want to say, like, whenever anyone says all things are going one way, obviously that's an over exaggeration and hyperbole, and then it's easy to say, well, obviously not everything is drafted this way. They specifically talked about being pretty happy with a decent amount of the teams being able to go the route of ignoring the first three dragons for your other goals of split pushing or getting more map control, and then being able to wait out that stage and then try and fight your critical fight. And I think that the idea of that is cool. When you do have the other options, you're still trying to force conflict early. And one team is trying to stack it up and then beat this big timer. And it also builds to a big moment when you fight over it. And the other team is trying to wait it out. You give up, and then you choose your moment. As you're alluding to, we've been missing some of the games where you choose your moment and you get the big conflict. But that's the goal.
There's just so many moments sometimes. You can't really. It's hard to choose
with these little taps to Fiora and Jax, which was the point of our whole conversation, was champion-specific buffs.
What, we're talking about patches? I thought we were just talking about meta.
I'm obviously going to try and jungle Jax once again, because E cooldown actually goes a long way towards jungle Jax too, because you rely more on your utility, more on your E. So I think it'll be a decent little one. For me, I was most excited, actually not about a buff, but a nerf to Karthus. And they're finally nerfing back his AP ratio on his Q to get him back down a little bit. I personally don't really enjoy playing that champion. So when he's super strong, I feel this torn inside. I want to win really badly, but I don't really want to play him really badly.
But not like this.
Yeah, exactly. Not like this, you know. I'd be much more excited with, okay, they're giving Hecarim a tiny buff to his max move speed on his E, and you can, charge in there. So give that a try.
I'm looking at bot lane is the most interesting thing to me. There's a ton of buffs and nerfs, and I am really hoping that they do something to shake this up with the Caitlyn buff that came in. Now she's dominant, because I hate utility marksman bot lane meta, because Jin's coming back a little bit. He also got a small buff, but it's pretty minor in this.
Are you saying Caitlyn's utility marksman?
No, but she usually brings them on, because a lot of the utility marksmen deal with her laning the best. Varus, Ashe, and Jin are all okay into Caitlyn, whereas like a lot of the other things just get pushed out and lose lane too hard. So like oftentimes Caitlyn comes with utility marksman meta. So like I do not want to see. We've already had a lot of Varus. He got nerfed right as Ashe was coming to prominence, or if you're looking globally, Ashe was already pretty prominent. I just don't want that to be the world's meta again, where bot laners are just picking these couple marksmen and going in a little circle. So I hope the Lucian buff is good. It seems pretty substantial, actually. Is probably the biggest straight buff of the marksman, just getting 10 flat damage on his Q, as well as some extra bullets on his R. So,
yeah, Misfortune also. I feel like they're bumping up a lot of the marksmen that are kind of right there. So
yeah, and then there's a lot of support matchups changing too. Like Morgana got tweaked, Bard got tweaked, Karma got tweaked. A lot of just kind of the Bard has become a little bit more enchantery, I guess, with the W start that people have been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other one that seems like the biggest nerf of the whole patch to me is probably Volibear. The bonus move speed on Q at rank 1 went from 15 to 10, and 5% doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's doubled when you're moving towards champions. So that's actually a 10%
5%
move
sounds
speed.
like a big deal to me, even just that.
I mean, it does, but a lot of people are always memeing the small number. So I'm just trying to get the importance behind it.
Don't mess with my move speed on junglers. Move speed is everything. That was one of the biggest problems with the old pre-rework Volibear is feeling like you're just going to get kited. You don't have move speed, you don't have mobility. He does still have a gap closer in his ult, but it's a long cooldown. It's your ultimate ability.
And if you can't do anything pre-6, it's tough.
Yeah, so I am pretty worried for the move speed nerf on Q.
Yeah.
Me too, I had already I talked to a lot of the pro junglers. Some of them had been putting extra points early in Q. In matchups where the enemy has a lot of gap closers. Maybe you have to do that now, in which case it's still a nerf to your damage because your W then won't be as high level.
Yeah, Nimbus also nerfed, so 5% off that as well. So like that is also a hit towards volley. Like pretty much every jungler it felt like was playing Nimbus. So I mean, chilling smite. When you pop that, obviously you still have the slow, but you lose 5% move speed on your Nimbus. You lose 10% on your rank 1 Q. Like that's very significant for a champion that is pretty binary and just has to walk at you. So will be interesting to see if all he gets pushed out of the meta. I'm kind of bored of watching him in pro. I think he's pretty fun to play, but I don't think he's that fun to watch. So I don't really mind if he's pushed out that much as far as pro play goes, but we will see.
Yeah.
The last thing I'm actually super excited for, probably the most excited for in this patch, is actually the skins. New Kindred skin, finally. That has been so long.
The Spirit Blossom. Oh yeah.
Because I actually hated this.
I don't scroll this far down in patches.
It's actually at the top. It's at the very top. Patch highlights.
My eyes glaze over, and I only see numbers that stop when I get to Nexus Blitz changes.
I hated the Super Galaxy Kindred skin. So the only skin that I've used was the release skin. That was like 5 years ago or something. that like this champion is old. Well, maybe not that long old. 3 or 4 years ago, something like that.
Still pretty significant.
But it's been a long time, so I'm actually pretty hyped for that skin.
Yeah.
All right.
Still though, on the pro changes, because Sett has been so big, and since we're focusing on pro, there's a ton of changes here. But the Sett nerfs are also pretty significant, and we had already been seeing Sett mid. These damage nerfs on Face Breaker and Haymaker, like that's some of your AoE, that's some of your wave clear. So maybe Sett will still be in support roles, and they're trying to push him more that way, as he's really actually been highlighted there with Hex Flash. But I think these are pretty big in taking down some of the super popular flex picks.
Yeah, Sett was not something that bothered me too much in the meta. I think it's
cool.
Yeah, I like seeing him. I still, the flex picks are something I want to see more of. So like I never like when they kind of push them more to one play style, like you're saying. So I'm not too thrilled with the Sett nerf of those. I like I said already a little bit, I like the support ones, like the Bard. The Karma got a pretty big nerf. Morgana got a small one. I think it was like one on her her Q. 1 second. Yeah. Actually, it's a buff.
There's so many changes actually in this patch. It's pretty insane.
Wait, Morgana got a buff? She was already seeing play. What happened?
She was seeing play as like a counter, right?
Yeah.
And actually a lot with Caitlyn.
Yeah. Actually, in my head, I flipped those numbers. I thought that was a nerf.
You know who I want to see in support is like the Zyras and the Brands and stuff. The more like extreme risky stuff, the Vel'Kozes, the Xeraths. Those I think are fun, like high risk, high reward, because you can get slammed by ganks, but you could crush lanes.
What you just said about excitement actually sparked another one, and I know we're gonna keep on remembering new stuff from this patch because there's so much in this patch.
Well, we'll move on quick because we got a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean the Akali one to me though is actually really exciting. And I was in Discord with someone when the original buff was announced, and they're like, "Oh, we're buffing her. Her E is gonna be magic also. So then all your damage is streamlined, and you can feel better about building Sork shoes and stuff." And I was like, "Hello, that is not a buff. That is a nerf." Akali, when there's a fed Akali in the game, everyone builds magic resistance. People are going to build magic resistance against Akali, or else they get popped anyway. This is a nerf. They're talking about, oh, you should feel better about itemizing your magic pen now as Akali. What about all the people building magic resistance against you? They feel better. That's how this actually plays out. And I think it was Palafox. He like messaged the designer. He's like, yo, this is actually going to be kind of difficult here. If this is meant to be a buff, you should do something else. So they added some more damage on her Q. And it's like 5 damage on the Q. But now, hey, you can feel better about building magic resistance. Buy your no magic mantle against Akali, because I think she's going to come back. KlutzA, the sub guy for T1 who got put in for Faker, already got to play her on stage. So I'm hoping more mid laners, because she's definitely one of the ones that's fun to watch. As much as everyone hated the Shroud when it blocked tower shots and everything, she's still fun.
Broken Blade's happy.
Yeah,
she's fun to watch. She's not fun to play against. I'll say that much. I absolutely loathe Akali. Anytime Akali is good, I don't want it to.
I want it buffed just because Azael's rants whenever he's not happy about something are fantastic.
All right, Azael, you may move on now.
All right.
Yeah,
LCS. It is time for playoffs, baby. We're going into week 9. I've got to say, it feels like really. This whole year is a blur with quarantine, to be honest. But this the summer split just went by so fast. It is blowing my mind that we're almost in playoffs, and then Worlds is going to be right around the corner, and it's like, oh my God. But we have a pretty tight race at the top now. It's actually become, very surprising down towards the end. It was a couple weeks ago looking like, okay, for sure, Cloud9 is first. TL maybe could get second. Beyond that, no one's really catching up. Cloud9 has started slipping. TL is sitting in first right now. We have,
Cloud9 did more than start slipping. They fell on their ass already. Feet are in the air.
They're rolling backwards. They're flailing everywhere. They're tied with TSM right now, though. FlyQuest is only 1 game behind them. So now there are 3 teams really that realistically are in the running in this final weekend for that bye, which is a very big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I would be I don't think anyone could have like believed this if you told them, you know, like I'm from the future, and you're like, C9 go 2-5 in their like last 4 weeks. You'd be like, all right, this guy's crazy. The time travel thing, not that weird, but the C9 slumping is whack. I just like they. The weird thing to me too is in the most recent games, you could chalk the first couple up to experimenting and weird drafts maybe, but they're just getting outplayed. It's not like they're doing like those big, like they would go for 3-man invades, get wiped 4 minutes in the game and bounce back and be fine. And like they've cut those mistakes out. Like that's not happening anymore. They're just getting outplayed, which is why it's even weirder to me in some ways. You know?
I think partly their laning just isn't nearly as dominant. That's been one of the biggest things that I've been noticing is they could get away with that because they get wiped before, but every lane won and Blabber was up 20 CS. So you're still even on gold.
Yeah.
But now that's not happening. It's like their lanes are going even. They're making mistakes in team fights and then they're just kind of getting outplayed.
And to me, the biggest part has actually been their setup for these team fights and then the execution within them as well. Some of the communication, like there are ultimates that are very clearly they're trying to play around and then they are not used. They're engaging at incorrect times. And a lot of it is even what I mentioned first, the setup for it, trying to get their vision down and stuff. They're skipping steps, it feels like, that to Mark's point, you could get away with if you had won the lanes and if you have Blabber that's already invading the jungle, like then you don't have to worry about some of these things and you do get to skip ahead. But if you have been coming out even, if you have a team composition that relies on some of these synergies, you can't skip these steps. They even did stuff like they're just pushing out against the Twisted Fate who's on cooldown, picking people off. It feels like there's a lot of things that are sobering moments for a Cloud9 that had dominated all of spring and the first half of summer. And there are so many things to point to with the laning and with the team fights for them to drop down. So they really have to focus. Luckily for them, their schedule coming up for last week is super easy. They have Dignitas and CLG. So I honestly think they're going to go 2-0 for sure. But that still means they have to have this focus that you're going to have for playoffs because only the top two get those buys. And you already mentioned, Team Liquid, Cloud9, TSM, FlyQuest, all pretty close in there. Even technically, we can have some crazy tiebreakers. I know I saw up to 7 possible tiebreakers of ways that we could even get some other teams up there.
Yeah, just the way that C9 has dropped off has been super weird. I mean, a lot of teams do, and it usually feels like it's, to Azael's point, it's less like, they just became worse laners. I feel like that's usually not how that, those drop-offs happen, which is why it's surprising and why I'm sketched out. And like you said, though, luckily they have a really easy strength of schedule. TSM, who tied them this weekend with a great game, and they're on a 4-0 streak, has to beat Golden Guardians and TL, potentially, assuming C9 goes 2-0, to continue trying to take away that tiebreaker, or to get to the tiebreaker to get the bye. It's a pretty tough road.
Specifically, how do you guys feel about Niski? And we're just looking at laning phase now compared to previously. Because previously I was like, he's smashing it. He picks counter matchups like Pantheon, super aggressive, plays with Blabber super well. Gets to roam around, but we've seen a big drop off in the mid jungle synergy for Cloud9 specifically.
He's never been, at least for me, like, he gets counter picks and could play aggressively, but it was never about like slamming lane. It was a lot of times like
obviously
he and Blabber would be good and then roam around. The weirder thing is like the roaming hasn't been impressive.
Yeah.
Because that's always what we associate with him, and like him getting solo killed by Demonte. And that could happen, in the first couple of weeks, and I just shrug it off because I know later he'd be up topside making something happen. But then Demonte's matching him on TP roams, and he's not getting anything done anymore, it feels like, which is why it's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like champion base or meta. Like I know I've seen the Cloud9 people say like, they just think they have the wrong read on the meta or whatever. I don't think that excuses like, some of the individual, like some of the errors and stuff. But the Niski stuff is weird because it does feel like, he never had incredible laning stats or anything other than like, his forward percentage and whatnot was good, but it was like CST was never astounding or anything. But it does just feel like he's struggling to get out of lane. And I don't know if that's just because people are bringing Syndra into him more, like something like that's going on. I'd have to kind of dig into it and look at some of the champion stuff. But it just feels like
their picks it's their picks that they're choosing for him that I'm referring to. You know, Azir, Zoe, Syndra,
but Zoe has been one of his
Cassiopeia.
biggest all year, right? Like C9 was spamming Zoe Ezreal in spring, and he was still everywhere, like on that champion. So to me, that like it's not the issue on that. It just feels like it's something to do with the play, or maybe just to do with the fact that him and Blabber aren't being able to create those advantages as much together. Because a lot of it was Blabber has a jungle advantage, uses that advantage, you know, with mid lane or they're doing 2v2s and things like that. He's picking up waves while Nisqi's roaming. That part of their gameplay seems to be missing now for me. And that's why like a lot of how I feel is to do with stuff in the jungle. Like when I think about this whole year, like how dominant Cloud9 has been, largely it has been around Blabber being the most dominant jungler we've like ever seen in NA, right? Like getting these crazy leads, working well with his lanes, and snowball and dives and snowball around mid and take objectives and stuff. And you know, I'm kind of concerned by his champion pool because they're playing no Graves. They've played 0 Graves games this whole split. They play no Nidalee. This is something that I tweeted about, but it's like the first 3 games of the split, they got Olaf. After that, it has only been unbanned 1 game where they were on red side and the other team first picked it. So they have gotten access to Olaf 0 times after the first 3 games. They don't pick Graves. They don't pick Nidalee. So you're very limited in your like kind of like dominant carry style, counter jungling, you know, junglers. There's not actually like a lot left in the pool. So like I feel like maybe they've been figured out a little bit like that. Like I just don't think you can do the same things on Volibear and Trundle and Sett that you can do on some of these other champions, and I feel like it's maybe not making the best use out of Blabber's skill set.
I think Volibear is really powerful, and I think the Volibear picks have been good. Like you can do a lot, you can create a lot of pressure early on with Volibear, and you can create dives and stuff. He's not as farm heavy, but his clear is actually still really good. Like you have plenty of AoE. Even like Cinderhulk, your Q procs the explosion for Cinderhulk. That plus an E coming down just insta clears Raptors for him. Like Volibear is I don't have any problem with that pick really.
But what does an advantage on Volibear do for the team in competitive? That's my problem. You're going tank and it's like you're up 10 CS or something. It doesn't do anything. Like
see the problem for me is not the pick, because the pick does a lot. Like you dive turrets, you can counter jungle, you can 2v2 skirmish extremely well. To me, it has been the execution. So if the Volibear game, like where he Volibear ults into the enemy team and then speak of ults him back with Sett, and you just have this comical bear jumping forward. Oh, like this is a bear that has bonus HP now, getting dunked on your entire team. That is where I'm seeing the critical errors from Cloud9 is the execution, where I'm like, what is the team fight setup that you think like solo engage Volibear? This guy just has a single target stun into a team that has Sett, and you're all grouped up right behind him. Broken Blade lands a great stun to keep them there, but to me, I'm focusing more on the actual execution from C9.
It's I can see both. I definitely agree the execution's a bigger problem, but like Blabber's always feels like he's been at his best when he is on a champion that's going to be a bit of a carry on in its own right. Even going back to his Kindred days or his Nocturne days, when he was more substituting in. Olaf is like that. If he gets far enough ahead, he just dives backline solo with like whatever supportive champs dumping their abilities on him, and he kind of wins the team fights himself. Volibear has an amazing skill set of tools to help your team and get ahead, and like you're saying, do all these dives and stuff, but Volibear, like you're saying, jumping in, pressing R at an 80 carry is almost never going to get a kill if the enemy team is kind of around them. And I feel like that's maybe some of the bigger meta problems with Blabber maybe is like if he's not playing something that has the ability to team fight and actually kill things on its own, he's going to struggle. But I still think that the execution, some of these other things we've identified are more pressing.
Execution is huge, and I'm not trying to discount that. And I'm also not trying to say Volibear is a bad champion. All I'm trying to say is that I think these picks do not make use of the unique skill set that Blabber has, because I think Blabber, better than any other jungler in the whole league, can take over a game with a lead when he is playing, like carry style champions, right? He has shown us that. He has had like a friggin' 80% win rate. He has been so dominant on these champions. Volibear is great. Trundle's great. Sett's great. But I just think when you have this guy with his skills, that you would rather have him have that 20 CS lead on Graves and, and be like one-shotting the 80 carry or something, like doing the kind of things that he can do that I think other players can't. Because to me, I just don't see a big difference between Blabber on Volibear and Blabber and someone else on Volibear, right? Like Wiggly on Volibear or whatever. Like, doesn't feel like
okay. Let's
so like, yes, there is a big difference as far as like pathing and stuff, but I'm just talking about like team fighting and whatnot. Like the difference is so much smaller, right? Yes, there is like a level of skill, but like Volibear is so simple, and the ways that you can actually like solo win a team fight, like very, very few, if any.
Yeah. And the reason I started the conversation with bringing up Niski is because obviously we pointed so many times to Blabber being the key component that you're talking about, playing in that way, invading, having Niski right behind him. And Niski had been playing more champs that easily play into that style of push wave roam, or even sometimes he would just give up the wave and roam with him. And Azir and Syndra and those types of things for him. He seems like if the champ is not more designed for it, obviously it's going to be more difficult to play into that style. And they did get their two big wins on the Galio games for him, which is, I'm like, all right, that's exactly what I'm thinking of when you think of that mid jungle duo. But they got some stuff to clean up, heading in. Let's talk about some of the other ones.
Yes,
Team Liquid basically have one of the buys locked up. They're sitting pretty at the top. Basically the old kings have returned.
Coach of the split Jack, bringing them up to first place.
I mean, they would have to go 0-2, and the other two teams would have to 2-0, and they would have to lose a tiebreaker. Like, it's pretty much guaranteed that they have a bye.
Yeah, one of their matches is Immortals.
There's a chance.
Interestingly, I think if they go 2-0, they beat TSM, and they go 15-3. That is the best record that they've ever had in regular season, which is kind of crazy to think that they're in a pretty good position to do that. I mean, the TSM game is pretty close to me. We'll talk about that a little bit, but like this team has so quietly become, or been, I guess, as good as all the other TLs that we've seen. I think it looks different to me. I think there are things you can identify that, compared to the previous 4-time back-to-back winners or whatever, but it's just insane that they have amassed this record.
I think Broxa's last weekend was great because I know that that is one thing that a lot of people were pointing to. The things about the quietly getting to the top, where the detractors were saying Broxa, and they were saying the slower pace of their games. But Broxa's Volibear and his Graves game, proactive in both. Even able to get the early kills in the second Graves one, and the gank for mid for LeBlanc. One of the kills was an ult over the wall snipe, but he was there, Azael.
Yeah, I mean the Volibear game, he ganked mid one time and then he farmed, and then he did
Volibear. Boom, done.
He didn't even go in his opponent's jungle or anything. Like I still have some issues with how Broxa is playing. I think TL has been a great team. I think it's almost nothing to do with Broxa. It feels like. Broxa feels like, I'm just being honest. I think Broxa feels like a mid or lower half jungler as far as his performance this split. He has not impressed me. And I was actually a really big Broxa fan, with him coming over to NA. I was so excited. We talked about this a ton. Like, I was so hyped. He just hasn't shown it to me. I think that there's a lot of junglers that have played just as well as him or are outperforming him. I think that he has been, doing fine. He has not been like horrible by any means. Jensen is absolutely popping off. Core JJ, I think, is the MVP. And tactical and impact have been great. So like, I think he has been surrounded by a really solid team. They play slow, so maybe this is what they're asking for from him. Maybe they don't want him to go crazy or whatever. But like, I just think that there's so many games where he hasn't really had that much involvement, even from like positions of power. So I'm still not super impressed with them. I think that's like maybe partially why TL feels a little bit different in their dominance than they have in the past, is that like it felt like Xmithie played more of a major role a lot of the time in getting these leads. Like when I think of TL of old, when they're slamming, it was like Xmithie does like these great ganks down to the bot lane and then double us ahead, and now like that's the clear PowerPoint and whatever. It just feels like all the action this time around feels like it's based on Core JJ doing stuff, not Proxa doing stuff.
And I think the only thing I'll say for Brox is he's not making the mistakes that he was making a little bit earlier on. So even if he's
doing much better,
even if he's a little bit less proactive, it's like a small microcosm, I think, for TL as a whole, where they don't make punishable mistakes. Like Broxton might be AFK farming on Graves, but he's still 0-0-0. There's no deaths. He's not like done anything stupid to like be in the wrong place. His team's controlling all the drakes because he's there. You know, like that game I think was one where people criticized him a lot for very understandable reasons about not getting involved. But at the same time, he's not a lot of other junglers in the league who could have lost that game just by outright
walking into the opponent's jungle and dying while trying to get Raptors or whatever.
And what you're saying about the difference in play styles, like TL was not always like super fast or anything, but their combined kills per minute in previous splits when they were title winning teams in 2019 spring and summer was 0.71 and I just lost it. I suck at this. So like there was 0.71 summer 2019. So like they were still at least somewhat faster then in terms of the amount of kills that they were getting. So I think that's why people feel like it's a lot slower and less.
What's it now?
Now it's sorry, I meant to say that. Now it's 0.58.
Yeah, that's significantly slower.
Yeah. So like, and they're the slowest in the league, which is I think the other thing. Whereas before they were third, and even when they had a lot slower one in summer last year or spring last year, it was 0.57. There were other teams below them. There were 3 teams below them because it was just a slower meta. Yeah. So like, I think that's where I understand the criticism, and they themselves have talked about wanting to be more aggressive. So it's not like they've come out and been like, no, we want to do this, because I think messaging matters a lot too. The fact that their players have said we're trying to get more aggressive, but at this point they're so solid fundamentally that I'm not really worried about them at all, and I think that they have a pretty good chance in playoffs of reaching finals.
I mean, they're just
on the road
crushing all the lower teams now. Yeah. That is one thing that makes me like really confident they'll go far, especially if you're first seed, you have the bye, and then I believe you have your choice of opponents coming out of that first round, right? So it's like it feels like almost no chance of you losing those types of games. Like they are just having such clean games against the lower tier teams now, where it's like you say, they're just not giving any openings. They're consistently extending their gold leads. They're not doing it in like the sexiest way by slamming them, but they're like stealing away all the jungle. They're not having dumb deaths. Core JJ is incredible. Jensen's a great team fighter. Tactical has been solid. Like everything, it feels really good. I think this team is looking really, really good. They're so far beyond what they were at the start of the split, where I felt honestly like they were just fluking into a lot of wins. It didn't feel like they were having dominant wins by any means. It felt like they were dependent early on in the season, often on their opponents just throwing games to pick up a lot of those wins. But at this point, you can't make that argument at all. You can make the argument that maybe they're not as dominant as like P Cloud9 or whatever. That's totally true. But they just look so clean against the lower half teams. I've got to give them a lot of credit. They've improved, I think, massively throughout the split.
I've been waiting to defend my boy Broxa here for last weekend's performance for a while, because I know you guys
we liked him last weekend.
That's what I'm saying. You are not giving him credit. It was more than fine. Okay, he kills both solo lanes, counter jungles the entire red side.
Are you talking about the Graves game?
Yes, his Graves game, because you guys are like, the farming Graves game. Yeah,
no, I think Mark was talking about
kills
the 0-0-0
both solo lanes.
Game. He wasn't talking about this.
Kills both solo lanes, counter juggles the entire red side, gets the dragon and the Rift Herald all by 10 minutes. If I am on a team and I do all of that, and you tell me I'm doing fine and I'm just there and I'm not a part of the wins, then I am pissed.
That's a good game. But
I was talking about the one from 2 weeks
Mark
ago.
was talking about the 0-0-0.
I know you're talking about the one from 2 weeks ago. I'm just saying you can talk about that one, but you should also get credit for the most recent one.
He had a really good game this weekend. I think the Volibear game was still fine. He ganked once, it worked mid lane, and then he AFK farmed and his team won. I'm not flaming BroxZ. I just don't think that he has been on the level of some of the other junglers, and I don't think he has been the cause for most of their wins. And I think that's true. Their team is great. And they're looking really good. And not every player on your team has to be the best player in the league to win, right? And BroxZ, we also know, has that ceiling to where he could be doing that, right? And if BroxZ just starts coming out and playing like he used to, and just slamming early games, and you still have Core JJ and Jensen and all these guys who are playing as well as they are, then all of a sudden this team is like an international threat, and and they're just going to crush everyone. But I haven't seen that yet from BroxZ, and I'm still hoping I will.
And I'm just saying, I know it was against CLG, but he did that in their game versus CLG. So you have seen it.
Yeah.
And then you can,
You've seen it. Don't try and deny it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying you've seen it,
I'm with
TSM is a really exciting topic as well as we continue on the ones looking for these buys. And a lot of it, I know everyone's already talking about, Bjergsen, these MVP performances. But they have needed the rest of the team to step up around him. And this is a team that consistently has these big peaks and will get you super excited, but you always need to be a little bit worried still too, because I'm never quite sure, since they haven't shown the consistency to make me, have that true faith, believing in it, heading into playoffs, heading into best of fives. I am once again getting excited. Obviously, they had 4 wins in a row. Big streak for them, and Bjergsen is definitely playing extremely well, and the rest of the members are stepping up. I've loved the addition of Treats. He's been very good for them as well, despite the debate around his black shields, which I think he answered pretty well.
I had his back. I was on the AD defending.
I know you were on the front lines there, Mark. Right there with them.
I think it's actually funny. I'm always a little slow to like buy into teams, whether they're good or bad. Like I probably hold on a little bit too long to teams that are in a slump, and I probably don't, catch on to the streaks quite. I'm just like a give me data kind of guy. And so TSM with the 4-0, because they were 2-0 last weekend, and I was still a little critical of them. And I was like, well, you beat CLG and Dig. It's not really that impressive. Mm-hmm. Then they beat EG and C9. And in my head, I'm like, there we go. Let's go, TSM. I'm hyped. And I was like, I was getting so pumped.
You're going to do a second half thing, aren't you?
Yeah. And then I did the second half look, and I was like, wait, EG and C9
are 2-5.
Are 2-5 in the back half. So if I'm supposed to be buying into streaks faster, I should buy into EG and C9 suck. And these aren't impressive wins. And I'm like, wait a minute. When's the last time TSM beat a quote unquote good team?
The funniest thing about that is, so CLG. So if you want to actually look at those 4 teams, theoretically, those are 4 of the 4 worst teams in the league in the second half. Because CLG is 1-6 in the second half, worst record overall. Cloud9 and EG are both 2-5. They're tied for 8th essentially, and then Dignitas is in a tie for 5th in that next little grouping above. So
same with 100 Thieves. And
so I'm like, you could make the argument that they only beat the absolute worst teams in the league, which is really funny to say about C9. But.
Yeah, it's funny, and I don't believe it, by the way. So before TSM fans get mad, I'm just saying that like. I defeated my own argument a little bit when I went back, and I was like, when's the last time they beat a team that I actually think is playing well right now?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I have to go far back. But I do think they actually are good. Like, this is mostly memeing. Bjergsen's been super good all split. I'd say Doublelift's actually been pretty good all split too.
I think so.
He's been a little bit higher variance, but he's always like making plays. He's always being aggressive. And the 2 bigger problems. Oh, you want to hop in?
Just because we had a this or that slide with who would your first all LCS team AD carry be, and Doublelift was not on the slide. It was Sven, Tactical, or FBI. I'm just really curious to interject within our TSM conversation. Where would you currently vote Doublelift?
So I did a bot lane power ranking. And I had him around 4th because I had Sven, and then FBI, and then like Tactical and Doublelift had the same like stats. They were just like
can I flame your bot lane rankings, by the way?
Go for it, dude.
So here's my issue with the bot lane rankings, and this is why I think it like for me that segment didn't work that well. Is I think it needs to be a duo lane thing. If you're gonna rate early game, it's so much like a product of who you're playing with. I think too, right? You have to like, especially if you're doing it just statistically. And not just like based on like eye test of like how the player is moving and stuff, then I think it's so reliant upon your lane partner, their champion pool and picks and stuff, right? So it was like Doublelift, if I recall, had like a 4 out of 10 early game or something rating, which like I think like when I watch him, I feel like he's playing as well as anyone in lane phase. I actually think his laning is really good.
If you're gonna flame my list, you better get the numbers right. He was an 8 in early game.
Oh, okay, my mistake. I guess I had him back. Was his late game rating bad then?
His late game rating was a 6.
Okay, my mistake. But like so I just think I don't even really have a problem with the ratings that much. It was more just like I think it's such a product of who you're playing with, and that's something that like as much as it maybe sounds a little bit BM to his teammates, like I think that Biofrost and Treats haven't been playing nearly on the level of some of the other guys. So it's like when I see Tactical up that high, I'm like, bro, Tactical is playing with Core JJ, who is I think like to me like. It's not even close. I think he's the MVP, and it's not close. Like I actually think this guy is playing out of his mind. And
I said for the this or that slide, I was like, all right, Tactical's out of there. He's got Core JJ.
Yeah, like so like put Doublelift with Core JJ, who's doing better. Because I think Doublelift is still performing better than Tactical. Like,
what? Doublelift and Core JJ? That would be crazy if that was a bottom lane.
So the funny thing is, I've said all this stuff. I've said like Tactical is getting carried by Core JJ.
Yeah.
I said in that segment that I'm actually rating his.
But all anyone does is look at the numbers, Mark.
That's their fault. Azael. All right. One of the reasons his rating was an 8 for laning phase was because he's dealt with support swap, and I don't think Biofrost was playing incredibly well. And so like that was part of the reasons that his like maintaining a good CSD, I think he was second or third highest in the league.
Early game is support difference, late game is team difference.
Right, but that's my point, is if you're performing with 2 different supports, one of which got benched, you must be playing pretty well. And Core JJ, I think, is carrying Tactical laning phase. I think outside laning phase, I'm actually pretty impressed by Tactical and his team fighting and stuff, which is why
he's been good.
Whatever. We tangented. TSM, Doublelift playing well.
But to answer your point, Kobe, I think he should be in the top 3 for sure. Yeah. As far as like where exactly I would vote him, I think that's hard because I haven't really I have to really review some of the stuff and dig into the numbers and make sure I can really defend it. But like my feeling is Doublelift has been good all year. I think Doublelift would be in my top 2. I still think it's Sven and Doublelift as the best 2 marksmen in the league based off the eye test. But whether or not I'm gonna still agree with that conclusion after I've dug into it more remains to be seen.
Yeah, one of the things with him that definitely drives a lot of fan sentiment too is there have been big moments like I forget which game it was, but he got hit by a binding in the top of the map with cleanse available. And just kind of sits it and then just dies in the pool. And
that was funny, but that one was somewhat defensible because it was anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he even afterwards was memeing himself really on it about it. It was like, oh my god,
really, really dumb.
All this stuff, and I know that people are also hyper focused now after the Bang situation where we're looking at the supports and the people playing around the AD carries afterwards of. Are they playing like the AD carry is trying to bait something, and another member of the team doesn't provide the defenses that you are expecting in this scenario?
Mm-hmm.
High had a pretty good one, last year with Bang, where they focused on it, and we got really in depth with the replay. For one of the big stories that we lightly touched on for TSM and the big discussion has been obviously after that game were the black shields for Treats, and we kind of memed on it and moved forward. But for people that weren't as deep in and didn't follow that story, there were a bunch of ash arrows that hit Doublelift regardless of Treats being next to him, and everyone's like, oh my god, why is he so late on these black shields? Because in some of the fights he does end up shielding Doublelift afterwards anyway. And that's kind of a look where people are like, oh, it's just late, right? He came out talking about, yes, there was the dragon fight where he saved it for Broken Blade and put it on the Aurelia instead. And there were a bunch of situations where the Ash Arrow's coming and the DPS for their opponents is not close enough to follow up. So, Blabber and Licorice are kind of baited into these engages and they're a little bit too far from the team, and and then TSM's able to win the team fight afterwards. And Treats even was like, ask Blabber and Licorice how they felt playing when I didn't black shield the arrows, and then there was black shield later in the fight. He did admit, and I was having a real hard time buying the one at the top inhibitor where Double had flash. And I was like, and he was like, all right, if I had one bad one, it was that one where Double had to flash.
That's what I was gonna say.
He did admit that
there was some where they seemed bad, but I haven't gone back and reviewed them.
There's definitely some where I was having a hard time, and he admitted that one. So
he admitted that. I'm not saying I played perfectly, but his approach was this more delayed black shield thing. And I mean, that's a lot of people talk about that in League in general, right? Is that half the game isn't even actually really reaction, it's prediction. you know, when people have insane plays where it looks like they flash something, it's because they were expecting to flash the whole time. And so if you're in the mindset that I'm not going to black shield Ash arrows, you're probably going to make a couple mistakes where you're like, I should have black shielded that one, but I was already in the mindset of hold and wait. So like, you know, it just changes what your mistakes look like.
Yeah, I mean, I know he talked about like how he wanted to stay black shield for Aurelia sometimes, and sometimes he's doing it later for whatever. But it is like it looked funny. There was a couple that I think were bad where like he got Ash arrowed and then black shielded like right after. I'd have to review it, but that's like what I have in my head from casting. But like I don't really care that much about that unless that becomes like a consistent problem where it's like you're playing Braum and your shield is always late, you know, and things like that. Then I think that matters a lot. But from what I've seen when he played Braum and everything, he like always had the E up in time and wasn't like, you know, slow on that. So he can have a bit of
he's
a pass,
got good fingers for sure.
I think he's been really good.
Yeah. I think so too. I don't think he's been like dominant, but he's been pretty like mistake free, and their laning has looked pretty good. You know, overall, I think TSM has improved a lot. I think Bjergsen has been a monster over the last couple of games. That is something that is really working for TSM. It feels like it's been a while since I've remembered, you know, games where Bjergsen is just like that much like we will win this game and like just, you know, hulking out. Like the Zillion game, as much as like the scoreline isn't that crazy, like that game was insane. I thought he played so well. Like he was so good about playing on the line of like you can't ignore him because he's too close for you to ignore him, but he's also too far away from you to ever actually turn on him and get him. And he's like buying so much time for his teammates to come back in to like TP in or setting up a TP flank, or himself like being able to find a way to TP back in and always having his ults on time. He never missed a single ult. Like he was just on it. Like that was a sick game.
It's one of those things too. Like I'm just gonna complain a little bit, but like people always flame like the player of the week stuff, and it's like if you give someone a big KDA,
so
they're like, oh, you're just looking at their stats, and then like you give it to Bjergsen for that game, and then the second one,
they're like, look at the stats.
It's like he didn't get any kills in that game with Zillion. It's like did you watch the game? Like he played great.
I think everybody agrees that Bjergsen's been playing super well though, and everyone's already starting to talk about him for possible MVP candidate. And I think one of the bigger things is Broken Blade on specific champions, like the Aurelia that he's super known for, because Broken Blade has been one of the other ones that has been the big question mark for TSM. It's been Speak and Broken Blade. You know, are they having a good game, bad game? Determines a lot for it. And for Broken Blade, I'm becoming more and more of focusing on what champion he is playing, because I have heard from a lot of the other pro top laners, you know, specifically like his Gangplank does not get you know, nearly the DPS out of you know, using his trial by fire a lot, or even some of the barrel chains and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be something they have to pay pretty close attention to in the best of fives. But we have already hit an hour and we haven't moved on to either of the other brackets. So let's quickly hit on FlyQuest here so we can give everybody a participant.
One little thing on Broken Blade. My concern for Broken Blade, like I agree with your points completely, but like my concern is actually more just these like big errors still. Like I still have so many games in my mind where it's just like, what's Broken Blade doing? He's wandering through the river. Oh, Broken Blade's dead. I guess they lose the dragon or the Baron or the Rift Herald or the whatever. Like there's a lot of those, and that is my biggest concern for Broken Blade actually, and has been, it feels like, this whole split long.
His Aurelia was freaking fantastic, and he got a big, you know, 4-man stun at the dragon to set up the you know, Spica's ultimate. So yeah, I was happy to see both of them, who had been getting a lot of flame, be the two that makes this big, you know, big TSM fight. But
teamwork and friendship.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying. It was my transition for FlyQuest. Teamwork and friendship. I'm stoked on them. I think that they're really good. I have to remind, like, everyone has to remember like their record and like how they've been struggling. MASH was statistically, and I think for a lot of eyeball check people, you know, like
for a lot of eyeballs out there,
a lot of eyeballs were watching. A lot of people would probably agree. Was basically the worst bot laner in the league. After Alltech got subbed out, you can debate, oh, maybe it's Apollo, maybe it's 6A, maybe it's this, but like he was in that, you know, like he was not playing well, and was a definite weak point on the team. Turtle's been a lot better, and this is the lineup that made finals last split. They're actually have a great win rate with this lineup.
5-2 second half.
Yeah, so like I think it, in a lot of ways, you kind of need to wipe your mind from the MASH days, because it's just a totally different lineup for me.
I like
I know
that.
that sounds.
Wipe your mind. I'm just imagining getting your fingers in there, really cleaning out that gunk.
Yeah, you get one of those Lysol wipes and you just wipe that mash out there and. Whoosh. I think that they're actually a great team. I don't think that they can realistically get a bye, but I think they are a big playoff threat because both C9 or TSM, they both need to drop one game, and then FlyQuest needs to 2-0 just to tie. And I just don't think that's going to happen with how C9's strength of schedule is and stuff. So I do think that they'll miss the bye, but I think they're a big threat come playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've been very good overall. Santorin, I mean, has probably been the biggest standout for me. I think Santorin has been fantastic. He's been, one of, if maybe not one of the best junglers for sure throughout the split. And I think especially recently, he has been really, really good. I think he has really smart, creative pathing. His level 2 ganks and stuff, people are pointing out a lot because he has been able to pull off, quite a few of those, even on tank junglers when people aren't expecting them. So definitely a lot of credit deserved by him. And I think PoE has been really, really solid and pretty dominant for the team. But Turtle stepping up too, his Ashe game this last weekend, I think, playing against, it was EG or something, but they had this really heavy dive comp with Rumble and all these different champions. And it seemed like it would be a pretty hard game for Ashe, but Turtle didn't even build defensively and never died the whole time. So I've been pretty impressed with him.
Must have hit 7 Ashe arrows as well, throughout the duration of the game. I also think it's pretty good for him. Caitlyn is back in. I always remember his first game subbing in for TSM. Pentakill with Caitlyn. D-Man's like, are you watching your Chaos because your job is on the line? You're fired.
You're fired. Never show your face here again. You're like, oh my god.
I was like, hell yeah, hype. Yeah. So I think the meta is also,
and
Jinx ult got a buff, so we know Wild Turtle's in there.
Tristana got a buff, gonna crit 6 times in a row again with 25%, whatever it was.
All right. The other upper bracket kind of race here, and technically, there are still a lot of options open if these top teams lose out. Golden Guardians, there is a way that they could even move up there to one of the bye, but
every team would have to lose every game.
Exactly. It's a ridiculous scenario. So that's why they're down here in our just upper bracket part of the race. But Golden Guardians, again, there's so much hype. We've talked about in the last couple of weeks. I had always been impressed by Susie, who he's Sett games specifically, but now a couple of his other champions, he's also having really good performances. So I'm definitely giving a wider berth to the possibilities for this bottom lane and talking about them as a package. We keep on highlighting the stats here for FBI, and people really remember the Aphelios games at the beginning of the split where you're like, 200 years, they keep picking Aphelios for him and he gets these big flamethrower plays, but he's been really good.
He has, and I think Hui has been good on more than just the Aphelios, or rather more than just the Sett for sure, right?
Yeah, it's starting to branch out there.
Yeah, the Morgana game I think was really, really nice. I think he's pretty willing to kind of get a bit more creative. Obviously, he has a lot of mid lane experience, so he can probably play some mages if those get a little bit popular down there. But I mean, Golden Guardians, not only are they 5-2 in the second half, so they're only one game behind TL as the team who has the best second half record. They're 8-3 in their last 11. So yes, their record is not insane, but over the last stretch of games, they have been one of the best teams, one of the best teams record-wise, at least in the league. So I think they are a team to certainly watch out for in the playoffs. They're not going to get a bye. I don't think that's going to happen, but I definitely think this is a team that could go, semifinals, potentially with the right matchup or a really good day, could even go further. So this is I think the best split Golden Guardians has ever had. If they don't completely fall apart in the final weekend, they're going to have the best record they've ever had. They've never gone above 9-9. I think they should pick up a win. What were you going to say, Mark?
I was going to say that, and they've never won a playoff series, and I would be shocked if they don't win a playoff series with this lineup either.
Yeah, I think that they can win a playoff series. I think that they're going to have the best record ever. I think this is the strongest any Golden Guardians team has ever looked, because I think they're actually better than what their record is, because they were struggling a lot at the start before they kind of figured out some more things. So I think, as far as the org goes, a lot to be happy about. The sky is definitely not falling for Golden Guardians. Things are looking pretty nice. It's more than just closer. Early in the split, I think that's all anyone wanted to talk about was closer. It's like, well, they suck, but closer though. And now I think a lot of people are talking about FBI pretty positively. I think I saw Tim from Oracle's Elixir even making, arguments that FBI should be in the MVP discussion. I've seen people even picking him up on that. You guys had him very highly ranked as far as your bot lane tier list, number 2, just behind Sven. So there's a lot working for this team right now. I think Haunter has been solid. So
Haunter is the second best laning stats in the league for all top laners, basically.
He always has really good CSD. He just doesn't miss farm. And I know that sounds funny to say, but it's like pros miss farm. and especially in top lane, if you mismanage your wave, you can just sometimes not even have access to the wave to the farm. Haunter is always so good, and throughout his whole career has been so good about any CS he can hit, he does hit. And he's really, really good at laning as a result.
I think that they have a super high ceiling. When we talk about, you have top and bot who are arguably almost best in class laners, right? Then you have KlutzA who's playing super well. I think that they still need to work on some of their mid to late game and stuff like that, but super high ceiling. And the same way you need to wipe your brain of some of the stuff with FlyQuest, you got to wipe your brain of those Nidalee comps that they were, that led them to start 1-3
Nidalee Cassio or whatever it was.
Yeah. And then Nidalee Jace, they had a lot of these really fragile comps. If you take those out, super good. I'm a big Golden Guardians fan. I think they definitely are closer to those other 4 teams.
How do you get access to your brain to wipe it?
You don't just have a little.
Just have a little brain.
Get in with the Q-tip.
So
also
my thing with the brain wiping is if you're gonna have selective brain wiping for one team, then you got to be open to having brain wiping for all the teams.
Yeah, why can't we just brain wipe the last couple weeks for Cloud9 and they're still undefeated?
Because it's still going on. It's going to build up again. You got to wait for the build up to finish before you wipe it. I think the build up's done for FlyQuest in Golden Guardians.
It has to harden in there.
Yeah. You don't want it if you premature wipe. It's just going to build up again.
So I don't want to say that you have already cast a curse to Azael, but the Golden Guardians next 2 games this weekend are TSM and EG. Very well could just end 9-9 again.
It's possible. EG's been stinking it up though, so I like their chances against EG.
They're still in the build up phase. You can't wipe EG yet.
I mean, EG's in that conversation for upper bracket, right? Because it's essentially what's going to happen is we talk about 4 teams for the bye, right? 2 of those teams are going to be in the upper bracket, the teams that don't make it for the bye. The bottom 2 teams are going to be in the lower bracket, right? So that's 7th to 8th. But everything from 3rd to 6th is going to be, upper bracket starting, right? And that's going to be Golden Guardians basically for sure. And then EG and 100 Thieves are both in there also. Those teams are a couple games behind Golden Guardians, so Golden Guardians, not really likely to have to worry about anything. I think they've already secured that. But EG, EG is sitting at 7-9 with a 2-5 second half. So they have really not been able to kind of make it work. At this point, I'm curious if EG is just going to swap back to their previous roster, if they're even considering that. Because I felt like it was honestly really weird to swap away from Kumo and Jizuke in the first place. I love Golden Glue. Huni's an exciting player, but it just seemed bizarre to me. I know Huni is going to become a resident next split, but Kumo is a young North American player. I actually thought he improved remarkably from spring to summer. His laning was abysmal in spring, and in summer he was actually laning quite well. There was other issues. I'm not saying he's a perfect player, but there was clear improvement for a very young player. Jizuke, obviously had some pretty bad games, but in spring, EG had those same kind of struggles as well and was able to actually turn it around and become a very solid team once they got things a bit under control. So I was honestly surprised by the move in the first place. And at this point, it just hasn't worked. Since the roster swap, they've played quite a few games with it now, and it's just not looking that good.
So let me pitch you on something. So a hot caller on Hotline League had this. I love the idea. Bench bang, put in deftly Huni and Jizuke, double coin flip.
You love the idea of benching bang.
This was a joke.
Okay.
Double coin flip. That was the whole. I don't love the idea of benching bang, but to Azael's point, you don't look good. You're not going to make worlds if you don't drastically improve. Because those top 5 teams that we talked about all actually look legitimately good. This is not spring where you have Cloud9 and a bunch of crap, and then FlyQuest and EG are the best. I think Golden Guardians is more legit, TL is more legit, TSM is more legit. You can't, even if you got back to the level that you were playing at in spring when you were almost a finals contending team, that wouldn't make you finals again.
And you need top 3 to go to Worlds, right? They're 2-4 with their roster swap since they went to Golden Glue and Huni. The only games they've won is Huni GP, which he's absolutely popped off on, but I don't know that they're going to get Huni GP anymore.
Right. So like, I think you need to do something different. I don't think you can, maybe I'm not saying it has to be bench bang, but like something has to go. Cause I'm off this train for sure.
It just feels so similar to the other iteration where we were like, okay, if Jizuke's on Echo or LeBlanc or X Champion, then I'm hyped for this game. But if I see it and he's on AP Kog'Maw or something like that, or Karma, then you're like, oh, it's a big yikes. Now we're coming into it and we're approaching it with, oh my God, these teams, they have to ban Rumble and Gangplank or else they're screwed. You know, Huni's getting his champ. It's over, kid. And then we see the one where his Camille game, and you're like, oh my God, is it a big yikes? Oh my God, we have to ban Rumble Gangplank, or is it actually a big yikes on EG? Oh shit, they banned Rumble Gangplank. Now what? Because the Camille game where he like flanks an Orianna at 50% just gets killed before the fight even starts, or the Kennen game. Then after that, with the Gunblade into Malphite, I don't think he got any good flank stuff. Maybe there was one in there, but it's a similar scenario for me where you got to predict EG games after you see champ select.
I felt like at least with Jizuke too, when he got ahead, he stayed ahead and would act like he would like int games, you know, but at least when he didn't do that and was actually popping off, he would continue popping off. Whereas Huni, we showed some stats where like when he's ahead, actually they lose those games because he like gets too crazy or something, you know, like it's a small sample size, so I don't want to pull too much from it, but it was one of those things where I was like,
it's like so insulting.
Yeah. It's like when you fall behind, you win because you're on GP.
all right.
Yeah. So Jizuke though, I just feel like they should put him back in. I don't know. I mean, I also think that like if you're looking towards the future of your org, I don't get why you're not playing Kumo long term. I think like the fact that he showed actually a lot of improvement between spring and summer. I think if you're looking long term, everyone knows the key to success in North America is find 3 really good residents that
Huni's going to be a resident though. Huni's going to count as a resident.
I know, but it's like I just feel like if you're building towards the future, there's one player who has been the same for a long time, and there's one player who's still developing. But yeah. I don't know.
I mean, there's one player who's been to World Finals.
Yeah, that's true.
And he's going to become a resident. I'm just saying that's the other side of of the argument. I forgot what I was going
to say. You were going to move and transition us down to CLG, Dig, and oh, you want to talk on your Thieves?
Oh, well, they're the last team on the cusp, right? I mean, we can almost bunch them all together. 100 Thieves, has been doing a bit better than some of those other teams in the second half. They're sitting at, I think it was 3 and 4. But they are right now one game up on CLG. So they're 2 games up on Immortals and Dig, so they're pretty safe as far as their playoff spot goes. You know, as long as they get like 1 win, they're for sure in. But I mean, it's really is that kind of like bottom grouping, right? 100 Thieves, CLG, Immortals, and Dig. CLG is the one that's really in trouble because they're 1 and 6 in the second half, and they're only 1 game up on Immortals and Dig.
Yeah, I think for me, 100 Thieves, I think that they'll still make the playoffs, but I'm after that, hot start when they beat C9, we now realize that that's not an accomplishment. And I just don't see them being able to win a playoff series versus any of the teams in the upper brackets, save for maybe EG. So I'm kind of off that train.
So here's my question for you then. Out of any of these 4 teams at the bottom, is there any team here that you would believe in winning a playoff series out of 100 Thieves, CLG, Immortals, and Dig? Because I definitely like the only one you have maybe convinced me of is Dig on a good day or something. Because at least Dig has had a decent second half. I mean, 100 Thieves had an okay second half. CLG is absolutely in the dumpster, and it feels like Immortals is there with them.
I'm with you, man. I think Dig. I would have said yes when they were playing Lorlo and they had that kind of hot streak, and then that's completely come apart. And not only has it come apart like, oh, they're losing games now, but their play style seems to have completely flipped around. Like they were scrapping teams, they were taking fights and winning, and now they just like slow bleed out and hardly ever do anything.
Yeah, I feel like 100 Thieves is clearly out of this grouping the nominee for me.
they shouldn't even be in. Like I put 100 Thieves in like they're in playoffs for sure. Good for them versus these other three. Like
they were at the bottom of the next grouping. I just kind of tag them on.
I just got to brush them down with the other ones. Because I was actually excited for this team. You know,
in their wins they look really good.
Yeah, and the losses, for me, the losses look like they either set up really well in the early game and then they have one of those big blunders, or there are a lot of losses. They've also been able to kind of pull back some of the games. So, and I always really like the possibility of playoff patch. They're buffing Jackson, Fiora, and all this stuff, and they've got someday. And Contracts has really gone a long way as far as enabling specific strategies for them. Like if they have someday on Camille, camping on for this top side, getting someday involved in the counter jungling, and getting Ryoma on Galio and those sorts of things. Those have been the games for 100 Thieves that have got me really hyped up for it. And so I still see that as a possibility with 10-16, opening up some more options in the possible champions that they could use to enable strategies like that. That's why I'm like, I vote 100 Thieves.
It is interesting that 100 Thieves, Dig, and Immortals actually all have the same second half record. They're all 3-4. My question and the reason I kind of grouped them in was Mark said he didn't think 100 Thieves could win a playoff series, right? So I was like, do you think 100 Thieves could win a playoff series, or do you just think that they're the best team of that grouping?
I think they could. I mean, I'm looking at like Evil Geniuses, even
that's true. I can see those
Guardians.
teams beating EG. I can see any of those teams beating EG. But I don't know, like, because EG probably is going to lose first round, and then maybe one of these teams can pick them up. Dig is also like the other one. Maybe I'll throw into the ring a little bit. Dig has had two of the absolute worst games I think I've seen this whole year. In the ones where they just like didn't do anything the whole game and then lost. Like those are horrible games. But in their wins, they've still actually looked pretty good. So it's kind of weird. Like I don't really understand what's even going on, like what the thought process is in some of those games where they just don't try anything the whole time. They just wait loose. But their good games still look good. So somewhat similarly to 100 Thieves. I don't think that they have like the same sort of like incredible player that someday is, right? They don't have that one clear star as much, but I still think Dignitas' bot lane has been solid, and I think that they do have the ability to, like, when they're on, look pretty good.
All right, so let's make some predictions then. Who's rounding out the bottom of the playoffs? Because all of them have pretty tough strength of schedules remaining. Dig has C9 100 Thieves, which is arguably the easiest, but still I don't think they're really favored. Then Immortals has TL and FlyQuest. CLG has C9 and FlyQuest. So pretty tough schedule for all these teams.
I mean, I think CLG is just going to lose both games.
Right, but everyone could just lose both games, and then CLG is still in.
Yeah.
Because they're one game up on the other two.
Yep.
So the question is, can one of these teams steal
a
win?
They can't. Well, I guess Dig could lose 100 Thieves as well. I mean, I think Dig beating 100 Thieves is not beyond the realm of possibility there.
But they need to do that to be able. And then actually, I need to check if CLG has
that seems like the best chance, actually.
They're 1-1 with Dig. So yeah, but otherwise, I'm scared.
Better than them all losing and CLG just being in by default.
I hope.
Because I think that might be the.
I would bet on that happening, and then that would make them 1-11 or something to close out the season.
I kind of agree with you, because when I'm looking at it, I don't think Dig shouldn't beat Cloud9. Mortals shouldn't beat Liquid for sure. 100 Thieves, Dig. That's like the best shot right there of those bottom teams actually picking up a win, I think. Because besides that, the schedules are really hard.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
And for Dig, one of the big ones for me isn't just the games that you're referring to, but also their most recent one where they actually got a really big lead with Dardoch on Lee Sin popping off. They had the LeBlanc Phoenix. Phoenix was getting solo kills, and then he builds Morella Namicon and a Banshees versus a team that has like Corki and Ashe that like can spam out abilities and pop it, and they aren't able to side lane and get pressure, and they kind of stall their own game out and end up losing that game where they got this big lead where you think, this is Dig again, firing on all cylinders. They got these crazy early leads. Solo laners are super ahead. That one kind of was the final straw for me when I was like, okay, I'll vote 100 Thieves in their matchup.
Yeah, Yeah, I like 100 Thieves over them still. I do think 100 Thieves is a better team overall, but I just think that like if there was to be like one of those teams like pushing their way in, it would probably be Dig, just based on schedule. But yeah, I mean it's interesting. I'll honestly be kind of disappointed if CLG makes it in to playoffs off of everyone losing every game, because I just think that's pretty sad.
And the whole 1-11 thing to get in is just oof.
Yeah, because then you just no one's gonna give them any chance in a playoff series, right? So
quickly, anyway. I want to inject a rumor. Okay.
Aha, the Pobelter one.
Yes, because since like we never get to bring the rumors ourselves, but since someone publicly tweeted it, we can now grab it from the public realm. Dom said broke the rumor that Pobelter is benched for CLG.
Oh, that's bizarre. That seems like their best player.
Is nuts to me.
That is so weird.
You can switch literally any other player around on that team.
No one's even gonna blink.
And exactly, and I'm fine with it. But what the heck?
I wonder if it's like an attitude thing or something, or maybe it's like, like I think he generally has a pretty good attitude, but I just wonder, it's like, oh, you're not getting along with coaches, or like there's some frustrations or something, because based off of like eye test, he seems like their best player.
They could get into playoffs. Like, this is week 9. You're on the bumper down here.
It's one of those things where like I have nothing good to say, so don't say anything at all. Bambi quote.
Okay. Well, just want to inject that real quick.
No, I think it's brain booming.
But to be fair, even with Pobelter, so I don't agree with the change. I do think he's their best player, but they're 1-6 in their last 7. This team looks horrible. They clearly look like the worst team in the second half, right? So even if you make it into playoffs in 8th spot, if you just go 0-3 in your first playoff series, who cares, right? Mm-hmm. So this is maybe them taking the like swing for the fences thing here, see if something else just really clicks. I've also like heard some people like conspiracy theory kind of thing, like, what if they're not actually benching Pobelter, they're just using him for academy to like get in the playoffs there because they think they're screwed in LCS or something. But like, I don't think that really makes sense. Either way, they're not looking great, so we'll see if they can pull off a miracle in week 9, but they are a game up, so probably gonna make playoffs. All right, now time to talk about our Honda MVP. Feels like the discussion is getting a bit spicy. It transitioned from originally being like Cloud9 and all roles to maybe someone else. And now I actually don't think Cloud9 is favored. I don't think anyone in Cloud9 is favored to win anymore. I still think that there's some discussion around Blabber, because you have to look at the year as a whole. Yes, his recent weeks haven't been as good, but his early weeks were so incredible. So he maybe should still be considered. But for me, I'm feeling like CoreJJ, Jensen, and maybe even like Bjergsen are maybe like all up there. I think CoreJJ is the clear MVP. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I think it would be hard for me to vote for anyone except him, unless Bjergsen maybe absolutely like stomps everyone this last weekend and they somehow get like first or something. But like, I just think CoreJJ has been incredible the whole year long, the whole split long, I should say.
Don't disagree, but I do think there's a chance that like they are playing for MVP this weekend. Because even if they don't get first, if TSM beats them, secures the second bye, beating TL, and then Bjergsen pops off in that game, I think he's built a pretty strong case at the end.
That's what I was gonna be like, what if Bjergsen goes down to bottom lane and he just kills only CoreJJ?
What if he picks Bard mid?
He walks past tactical and he's just like, my MVP, and just kills CoreJJ and then walks away.
I'll consider it.
I'm go ahead.
I mean that to me is the hot discussion right now for Honda MVP, because I feel pretty similarly. Even if Cloud9 win both their games, their opponents are very weak, so it's hard to get more votes, more fan sentiment by Cloud9 now stomping Dig and then CLG are their last 2 opponents. It's not like people are gonna be like, oh wow, I'm back on the Blabber train, even if he has an amazing game. It's kind of hard. Meanwhile, TL are literally playing TSM, and this is the hottest topic. If TSM win both of those games and deliver that loss to Team Liquid, and then like I feel like there is a lot riding on that, especially with the form that Bjergsen's been in recently. Him and CoreJJ going going to.
And we even got a Twitter question specifically about this from It's Not Satirical. He is saying Sunday's matchup of TL versus TSM decides MVP, right? Winner take Saul, Cora JJ versus Bjerg. So you know what the real chat move is. Cora JJ just lane swaps mid and he goes against Bjergsen.
They should make a bet pregame. They should tweet at each other. Someone should be like, all right, handshake, whoever wins this game, we'll throw our weight behind the other one's MVP.
They start campaigning.
Yeah, they campaign for the other person.
Kind of memeing about, Bjergsen going down to bottom lane, killing Core JJ. It's way more probable that with a pick, Core JJ goes mid to gank Bjergsen. I don't think they're not going to let him get Bard. Bard is not going to go through. The Nerfs aren't on till it's 10-16 playoff match, so it's going to be banned. But that type of thing is what would add the extra spice.
I'm actually sad that Bard got nerfed, to be honest. I just think
he's
OP.
So fun to watch. He's actually busted right now. I know
he is. He has been for a long time, though.
He's too safe, too.
I mean, he's been like really high win rate for a long time, even in solo queue. But
everybody feels bad when one of their favorite champions they like to play gets them.
But even just to watch, like, it's the same reason I like seeing Lee Sin and stuff be good, champions like that. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, the MVP discussion I think is really interesting, right? I do think, to your point, as much as it is a full split award, recency bias is always going to play some part in people's minds. It's just a fact of life, right? And we do have to remember, it's interesting because you're saying, like, Blabber can't like reconvince people because even if he slams some teams, it's like, some noobers at the bottom and then no one cares. But like, if they go 2-0 this weekend, and TSM goes 2-0 or whatever, and they finish with the same record and stuff, it's not as though Bjergsen had no bad games this whole split, right? He has really turned it up at the right time, I think, and he's really been dominating down the stretch. But Blabber will have had equal or more dominant games than I think Bjergsen has, and then it's just a question of like, okay, well, like, are you more important to your team? Like, were you the reason you were winning more? Like, that then you kind of have to make more judgment calls on all of those types of things.
I think if the only way that Blabber gets it again somehow is like TL and TSM really struggle in their last weekend. They smash, some tiebreaker happens, Blabber runs over the tiebreaker and carries them back into a bye. But even that feels pretty much.
I think All Pro is gonna be so interesting too. And we'll talk about that more next week. But like, oh my god, just off, like, it went from like everyone Cloud9 and maybe Core JJ to like, I don't even know.
Yeah, we got FlyQuest members in there. Someday can always make a good case. We got all kinds of stuff, even outside of the top teams. Golden Guardians.
KlutzA, I think, will probably be in the top 3 and stuff, right? Like, there's a lot of people who can make an argument to be in there.
And by the way, there is a 93.5% chance that we have at least one tiebreaker. So we're gonna have some tiebreaker games at the end of the split here too.
Yeah, I heard there's pretty good chance of like 1, 2, or 3, and then beyond that it drops off a lot. But I
add them all together. Having at least one tiebreaker is basically happening.
I always hope when we get tiebreakers, it's for like the really important ones, like bye or not, into playoffs or not, right? When it's like,
now, I want to see the tiebreaker between Immortals and Dig,
the 7th or 8th seed. Yeah, that's the hype one for sure. All right, well, the MVP voting and stuff obviously not going to come out for a while, but after next week we'll start talking, I think, a lot more about All Pro at the end of the split and be looking towards those end of season awards. We've got some Twitter questions here though from you guys. This one comes from KlutzA. He says, with the recency of Caitlyn getting buffed, we've seen considerably more Jhin pick competitively. Do you guys think this is just coincidental, or do you think that Jhin is the safest pick into Caitlyn due to his his decent range?
Well, he has 550 range. So that's pretty average for 80 carries. Is most of them 550? You might be referring to W, because W is the part of the kit that makes Jhin for me. Jhin being a marksman that has a snare is super rare. And I've already been talking to some of the teams about the Jhin picks that have been coming up into Ashe and stuff like that, Ashe and Caitlyn. And most of them have just been saying, it's player specific of if you have a Jhin player now, you do it. But he's getting buffed on the 10-16 like we talked about. So he's already going to be in a better place for playoffs. So maybe more of them get into the Jhin space. But to me, it's so much around having that utility and being able to get snares for your team. I was listening to the Sneaky co-stream last weekend, and he was just complaining for like 20 minutes about the ineffectiveness of Jin's ultimate now, of what the state that it has been reduced to. So if you're picking him, you pick him for the snare.
Yeah. All right, next one here. This one's from David Yoshimoto. He says, did Cloud9 get complacent, and should they regret all those experimental drafts? How much more dominant does TL's 4 consecutive championships look now? Can we say TL's run was better and more dominant? I think without a question, 4 straight, I mean, C9 could still win, right? So we have to like leave that door open. But if C9 doesn't win this split, of course, it's not even close. TL had a way better run. That's the most championships anyone's ever won in North America. But you can say that Cloud9, within a window, looked like the most dominant team of North America still. Yeah, I don't think they look like that anymore, but things can change.
Right, it's like longevity versus sheer dominance for that that game in that period of time, like you're saying. Yep. So TL's is more impressive in a longevity standpoint. And should C9 have experimented? You can't say without knowing. Like they might not have got complacent. They might have been trying to find new picks in the meta that they thought were good, and they talked about having good win rates with the Lux Sona lane. So like, is that even experimenting? People do that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's the highest win rate in solo queue of any bot lane by like a lot. Lux Sona. So like it's obviously good. And I wouldn't say it's complacent to try out new things. I think maybe you could say they underestimated their opponents more than complacency. Complacency is like doing the same thing and just like resting on your laurels. Trying new stuff isn't being complacent, right? So I don't see it like that. But it'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back, and I'm sure they'll regret experimenting if they don't get their buy. All right, we got some anchor questions now. The first one is coming here from Ryan Hodgson. And he's asking about if practicing under high ping conditions are worth it or not.
I'm a South African playing on the EU West servers on anything from 160 to 240 ping, and have peaked consistently in low gold elo, playing mostly low mechanical junglers and supports since Season 3. My question to you guys is, how much does ping affect your ability to play the game at varying different levels, and could training on high ping ever put you at an advantage? I'm thinking about this in a similar way to how marathon runners often train at high altitude to handicap themselves, and applying that logic to the issue of NA pros playing on 60 ping. Thank you so much for taking the time. I love you guys, and shout out to Honda as well.
Shout out to Honda. I like this guy.
Oh, heck yeah. I really like this question because it's a different take on a similar question where people usually bring up ping, but I like this angle at it because it just made me start to imagine like you have like some training capsule where you're training on low ping, and it evolves you to like see into the future or react quicker in some way, or like you're working out your hand muscles or something. First of all, for the first part of the question, you playing on 160 to 240 ping has a super big impact on
especially
on
240 is
the
like
level you can get to. I remember when we were in Berlin at the EU LCS studio playing from there, I had less than 240 playing to North American servers to try and play my decay game, and it just felt like I was playing in molasses, completely bogged down. I did the same strategy. I only played Udyr, only play very low mechanic champions. I think it has a really big impact at that level. As far as the possibility of training on higher ping making you better, it's not like training muscles, and you're going to get stronger if you train in higher gravity. It's like training muscles in that you're making your muscle and your twitch reactions become accustomed to this timing difference. And so muscle memory that people talk about, you're actually training it in the wrong area at the wrong timers. So it's not beneficial. It's actually hurts you. And a lot of the pros complain even about switching between 60 ping and 5 ping or whatever.
It's more akin with running to being like, instead of just like training in high gravity, it's more akin to like you're changing your running form. You know what I mean?
Running in
you're
mud.
like, you're pulling your knees up super high or whatever. It's like that's harder, but it's not the same form that you need to be like learning and training. It's different muscle memory.
Final thing I'll say about the high ping getting higher rated, Quas famously, when he was playing for Venezuela on North American servers, had like 250 ping and was challenger and was dumpstering kids with Swain too, which was like not even a strong champ most people thought in the meta. So ping in solo queue, it hurts, it's annoying, you can overcome it.
240 is pretty extreme though. I will say.
I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Quas had 300 ish.
Yeah,
it was nuts.
I'm sure that Ryan, I'm sure you will be higher rated if you take a vacation and head up to Europe and you get closer to the server. I'm sure you can peak way higher.
It's also like one thing I will say is because I used to play with really bad ping. Like when I lived in Toronto, I was playing to LA servers, right? Because that was before they moved the league servers. So I played with like 120, 140, and I got to diamond with that. But like I think there's a huge difference between that and 240. And I would also say once you're used to playing on lower ping, going to higher ping is much harder.
Nightmare.
Like it's way easier to go down than it is to go back up. So like you can get used to something and do okay. Like when I played WoW for my first couple of years in Arena, I played to LA servers and I had dial-up internet. So I played with like 250, 300 ping. And then when I first started playing with good ping, it felt like I was playing the game on like easy mode. It's really, really funny, like realizing how much of an advantage it is. Like even in League, the biggest thing I noticed going from even 120, 140 to lower ping was, when someone would use like an ability on you and you react to it, right? Like say any flash tippers and I flash, I'm always stunned even if my flash goes off, right? Like on the other side of it, the ability has always hit you. So like anything reactive, I think is incredibly difficult to actually deal with. All right, we got one more question here from David Slavik. This one is about removed items being seen in Champions Kit, like Volley's LT.
Hey guys, I was thinking about how Volibear's new ultimate incorporates the old removed item Ohmwrecker, and I was wondering if you thought any other removed items or possibly current items would be interesting to be involved in a Champions Kit, kind of how Lilia's passive is very similar to Liandry's.
We don't. So as much as I liked a lot of the removed items, there weren't that many that were as crazy as like Dota items that have these super unique effects. I'm thinking maybe Deathfire Grasp, but even that it would still be kind of straightforward as like a champion ability.
And that's kind of like charm,
like Ari
right?
charm, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one that I'd like to see is
Banner of Command as your ultimate.
It was that, but Zizarot Portal. I'd love to have a little Zizarot Portal champion who
that's Malzahar's W.
Yeah, but it's just
that's an interesting
AFK
one.
It, and you just like, you drop it in a lane. There's your W, and it just poops out little guys. You go running down the lane, and you can use it in team fights. Then they start spawning creeps in the way, hitting skill shots and stuff. Like it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I would be a big fan of more minion based stuff, but like people hate playing against that kind of stuff. People hated Zizarot Portal and Banner of Command, and they hate like Necro books and Dota and things like that. So I don't think we'll see it because it would be so unpopular.
Yeah, a lot of champion abilities already are like items like, oh, what if there's a champion ability like Zhonya's? And it's like, well, that's every person who goes kind of untargetable already, except most of them have mobility tacked onto it too, like Vladpool or Fizzy and whatnot.
I mean, Bard literally has the same animation even. All right, like the same graphic for Zhonya, so that's pretty funny. All right, thank you guys so much for the questions. You can keep sending them to us on anchor.fm. If you search The Dive, you'll find us there. You can also hashtag The Dive LOL. I still get tweets every once in a while asking about how to actually ask us questions. You can tag us or not, doesn't matter. Just use the hashtag The Dive LOL. We can search questions by that and pick them from there. Thank you everyone for
It certainly helps to tag. It does see it in my timeline.
Yeah, so tag us all and hashtag The Dive
Don't
LOL.
tag me.
There you have it.
Not me.
Don't tag Mark. Get him out of there. Flame him.
Mark doesn't care.
I do. I don't care.
Mark hates the fans. There you go. That'll do it for this week's episode. That'll do it for this week's episode of The Dive. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to Honda for making this possible. We'll be back at the same time next week to take a look at playoffs, All-Pro, everything coming on up. We'll see you then.